Hi, I'm Cassandra. I will be presenting a proposal for diverse learners as my final assessment in the subject of educational psychology. I will be covering three real learner profiles, discussing about their learning needs and exploring learning strategies tailored to help them. So let's begin. For my first profile, we will address him as T. He looks like the picture that I've presented on the right. He's a boy, 7 years old of age this year. He is of Chinese and Korean background. His mom is a Korean and his dad is a Malaysian Chinese. He's the only child of the family and he spends most of his time with his mother, who is a housewife, hence, his main language is Korean. However, he understands English well. He loves drawing and likes a variety of colors in his art, and he is mild autistic. I will be talking about the differences between T and a typical child. As most of the autistic children, they are mainly auditory learners. Hence, T is also very sensitive to sound. He would often make sounds like a siren whenever he is triggered by noises around him to express his discomfort. He has difficulty expressing himself in speech. For students his age, he is only able to express by yes or no or simple one or two words compared to students of his age who is able to converse and construct sentences. He has speech delay, hence he prefers solitary play most of the time, as he is unable to socialize with others due to the language barrier and the speech delay. When he first came to us at 5 years old, he doesn't show any eye contact with anyone who speaks to him. And most of the time, he would parrot after a person, repeating the last two words of the sentence. T's unique learning needs are in the area of communicating and writing. Despite having great love and enjoyment for drawing and coloring, T struggles with writing. Hence, he would whine and cry loudly to protest against completing any writing work, giving his teachers a hard time trying to manage the classroom order, as well as getting him to complete his work in the midst of the disruption. Because of his language barrier and delay in speech, he has difficulty expressing his needs, which often leads to frustration and occasional throwing of tantrum, since his needs are not met. He struggles with responding verbally and would often resulting in parroting, as mentioned before. The learning strategies tailored for T was positive reinforcement and structured routine based on B.F. Skinner's theory on behaviorism. To apply the theory on T's learning needs was to implement the positive reinforcement by giving T verbal praises. When T repeatedly gives the relevant response. This is when the teacher repeatedly teach him how to respond appropriately by asking him the same question just to direct him until he gives the relevant response. This is a consistent and continuous process until he is able to respond accordingly to the teacher. This not only helps him to understand the connection between the question and the answer, but teaching him to respond in the same way when he encounters the same situation. This will help him to express himself better in communication. Besides that, the teacher also implemented the peer modeling by T, learning through observation and imitation. This is based on Albert Bandura's theory on social learning, where T will be paired up with a peer buddy whom he is fond of to guide him to respond in action. So T will observe his peer and learn to imitate through monkey see, monkey do. Hence, if he were to encounter the same situation, he will not just merely express through whining and crying, but instead would imitate his peer and respond in that same way which his peer responded in a good manner and good behavior. For our second portfolio, we will address our next learner as B. B is a boy, 6 years old of age. He is of Chinese background. He's the only child in the family with a baby brother coming on. His main language is English. He is quiet but enjoys playing with his peers every morning upon arrival at school. He has some areas of developmental delays. The differences between B and a typical child is B is much smaller and shorter in size. He has difficulty expressing himself as he slurs and has unclear speech. This is because he couldn't pronounce sounds and words clearly and properly, making it difficult for his peers as well as teacher to understand what he is trying to say. He is slow to respond when he is confronted due to his lack of confidence in speech. He also cannot register daily routine, such as saying a simple prayer before snack time, which is repeated every day for the past 3 years. He prefers nonverbal interaction than speech when interacting, such as shaking his head, nodding his head, shrugging his shoulders, as well as showing facial expression in his daily interaction. B's unique learning needs are in speech delay, which was mentioned earlier on. Besides that, he is also slow in his response, in which he has difficulty in processing too much information at once. When too much information and instruction is given, he will be overwhelmed, which lead to a delay in response or even no response. This is often referred as cognitive overloading, in which he will also tremble, his body would shiver, and he would respond in crying and a refusal to respond as well. He uses more body gesture than speech due to his struggle with verbal communication. Some possible underlying reasons for this delay is brain development and nutrition due to his eating habits may be affecting his brain development, as he lacks essential nutrients during his early growth years can impact his cognitive and language development. Due to B's limited diet, depriving him of the nutrients that his brain needs, it is it is once mentioned that B has a history of having only rice, soup, and also potato chips for every meal every day. And so much so, his parents are unable to convince him to eat and instead they comply to his wants and his needs in his diet. This affects him and his development, robbing him of many experiences and also his development in life. Due to his unwillingness to try new things and his hesitance into trying new things, especially in tasting, this causes him to lose out in many developmental growth. The learning strategies proposed to help B are based on Vygotsky's social cultural theory, which emphasizes on the interaction, where learning happens through social support. Vygotsky's theory, strategy of scaffolding, believed that learning takes place most effectively when children work within their ZPD, where tasks that children cannot yet accomplish alone, but with the help of a more competent peer or adult, is known as the ZPD. For example, when B is working on something or an equation, but with the help of the teacher dropping hints and also prompting him, supporting him gradually, eventually B will be able to work it out and find the correct answer with the help of the teacher. This is important by constantly having to remind B to seek for assistance and to also work on his speech development. Besides that, Vygotsky believed in collaborative learning or cooperative learning, which children work together to help one another to learn, where children develop inner speech available to others as well, gaining insights from one another's reasoning. For example, children share thoughts together and actively engage in play and discussion. So in this case, teacher will assign B to work collaboratively with a developmentally advanced peer on a task under the guidance of an adult, in which B will be able to learn from observing and also through his interaction with his peers. This will help him in his learning and would also help him to develop that critical thinking skill. The next portfolio will be taken from the next learner known as L. Elle is a girl. She's 6 years old of age. She is of Chinese background. She's the only child of her family. Her parents are divorced. However, they are on good terms, on friendly terms, where they would sometimes bring her out for a meal and would also go on trips together. She's multi-talented. She does ballet. She plays the piano. She sings well. She's very artistic and she's also very athletic. However, she has a very strong character where she wants things her own way and would demand for it to happen. The difference between Elle and other typical children is Elle has behavioral and attitude problem as a result from her family situation. She naturally seeks for attention at school and her peers, and once she receives that attention, she became manipulative in her interaction with her friends. She often wants things her way and is very opinionated and vocal. Her friends who are more submissive would give in to her where she takes on the role as an authoritarian leader, controlling others to comply to her wants and commands. However, behind all this lies vulnerability, where she seeks for care and love due to her insecurity with her relationship at home, especially with her mom, whom she called her best friend. Elle's unique learning needs are to be aware of her actions and consequences. Being a child, she only sees her own needs and places them before anything and anyone. This causes her to make decisions that benefits herself but cause harm and hurt to others knowingly and unknowingly. Therefore, directing her to make wise decisions is very important as she is of age to learn, and it is important to help her to understand consequences as well, teaching her to put herself into others' shoes. It is also important to guide her to good intentions and also appropriate actions and behavior. We also need to teach her to learn to empathize with others. Despite being young, she does understand. And most importantly, to remind her that she is deeply loved by the people around her and to teach her to love herself. Along the years, different class teachers have been finding ways to help her in her behavior. Some more effective ways are by practicing positive reinforcement and punishment, which is learning through reward and discipline. This is based on B.F. Skinner's theory on behaviorism, which is encouraging good behavior and conduct in L. We apply discipline that reflects consequence of misbehavior to help her understand that every actions lead to a consequence. If you have good intention and actions, it will eventually lead to something good. Similarly, bad intentions and actions to others will eventually lead to an undesirable or bad consequence to Elle herself as well as others. So, before implementing this, it is very important to inform her of the rules and expectations from her. This will lead her to making decisions whether or not she will choose to follow. This encourages critical thinking as well as rational thinking in her. So, after applying this, we do realize that it does help her improve in her behavior from the way how she treats others, especially her friends. Besides that, Elle also learned through peer modeling, which is learning through observation and imitation. This is adapted by from Albert Bandura's social learning theory, which we state the importance of vicarious learning, which is also known as observational learning, and also self regulation. So, vicarious learning is learning by observing others rather than going through the experience yourself. Now, self regulation is by learning to control yourself, uh, which is your emotions and your behavior. So we realized that Elle has been learning from this vicarious learning and self regulation. So she learns from her friend through imitation when she sees that her friend does a good behavior and was rewarded by some uh, verbal praise. Similarly, she will imitate that same good behavior, and when she receives that verbal praise, she feels value, and this good behavior will be repeated. Besides that, she also learned how to control her emotions. She learned to control not only her anger and frustration, but as well learn to regulate and think what are the consequences that comes behind, which will affect her behavior. And then she will also learn to follow rules and resist from uh, reacting impulsively. It shows improvement in her interaction and her relationship with her peers by adapting these two theories. After going through the three different profiles, I would like to conclude that each learner has their own unique strengths, the challenges that they face, and also the preference in learning style. Therefore, it is our responsibility as teachers to adapt to different teaching methods to meet their learning needs. This will help them not only in their development, learning development, but more importantly, in which it will bring them through their life. Therefore, I would like to end here. Thank you.